Okay. So as we all know, large language models are deep learning models that have been trained on massive data sets. They can learn and generate text in a human-like fashion. So to give you examples of LLMs, OpenAI's ChatGPT models, Meta's Llama models, Mistral AI's Mistral models, and TIA's Falcon models, and then there are many more LLMs being emerged every day. So these LLMs have been used in text generation, particularly in generating reference letters, medical reports, medical recommendations for diagnosis and treatment. They've also been used for academic research writing and creating children's education materials, and they have been used as personal writing assistants, and then there are many more applications of LLMs in text generation. Although these LLMs are very helpful in text generation, but they raise significant ethical and social concerns, particularly regarding gender bias in the text they generate. The LLM-generated text contribute to societal harm through the perpetuation of gender stereotypes and bias. For example, when there is a presence of gender bias in children's stories, according to psychological studies, children internalize the societal expectations very young age, and this alters their hobbies, interests, and even their academic and career paths. And the other example would be when there are gender stereotypical words in job postings, particularly women, they assume that those traits are expected from them, and that refrains them from applying for the position. So this results in this deprives women of their career opportunities. Therefore, we aim to investigate the gender bias in the text generated by various state-of-the-art LLMs. So we generate gender language dataset using different LLMs based on gender lexicon. So what we do is in our instruction, which is a set of instructions, we include the words, list of gendered words from these gender lexicon, and we fed this to LLM to generate gender language sentences. So using this generated data set, we train a gender stereotype, we use this generated data set to train a gender stereotype detection task and measure gender bias in the classifier. We also use the same data set to perform a comprehensive analysis of the LLM-generated text at both the sentence and the word levels. So gender lexicon, it is basically a precompiled list of words representing social characteristics and behaviors that differentiates men and women. So there are two gender lexicons available out there. One is Gaucher's and another one is Crayon. The Gaucher lexicon did not have any gender scores, and it did not require any filtering. Whereas the Crayon one did have gender scores, and we filtered out words so that we could extract the most frequently used gender adjectives that are masculine and feminine words. And these are a few example words that were taken from these lexicon. So the Crayon one is the more recent gender lexicon, which captures people's perceptions of gender stereotypes in contemporary society. So we decided to use the Crayon lexicon to generate gender language dataset using the LLMs in our experiment. So when it comes to designing our prompt, we chose zero-shot prompting technique where we don't have to include examples in the prompt that we fed to the LLM. The reason for choosing this technique was it can handle broader range of prompts without requiring any examples in the instruction prompt. And this also prevents the LLM from generating sentences solely based on examples. Our main goal was to mitigate the risk of introducing bias by not including any examples in the prompt. So we generated a gender language dataset using 4 LLMs, namely ChatGPT 3.5, 4, Llama 27B, and 13B. We also used 3 other LLMs, namely Falcon 7B, 40B, and Mistral 7B. But then we had to omit those 3 LLMs from our experiment because they produced very poor results compared to the other 4 LLMs. So we started designing our prompt. So this is our initial prompt, where we instructed the LLMs to generate sentences about men using gender adjectives from the lexicon. So this is an example instruction prompt where it instructs the LLM to generate sentences about men using the masculine adjectives from the lexicon. So here we input lexicon words in batches of 10. This is because few LLMs tend to lose or forget information from the instruction prompt while generating the sentences. So we stick to inputting lexicon words in batches of 10. We also refined our prompts to get the desired responses from the LLMs. So we instructed the LLMs to include to include sentences that mimic styles found in various contexts, such as movie dialogues, job ads, magazines, etc. And we also instructed the LLMs to include all types of English sentences, such as simple, compound, complex, and complex sentences. And we also included another instruction that instructs the LLMs to include all types of tenses and parts of speech. And the last instruction was to format the output in this way. Since the Llama models didn't stick to the last instruction where we instruct the LLMs to format the output in a certain way, we had to include an additional instruction specifically for the Llama models, which instructs the LLM to place the output inside output tags. So as we see, the generated data sets are quite balanced across the gender. Here, and MF refers to the sentences that are generated about men using masculine and feminine adjectives, respectively, and FF and FM refers to the sentences that were generated about women using feminine and masculine adjectives, respectively. So when it comes to evaluation, we assessed the gender bias in the LLM-generated text using a downstream task, specifically the gender stereotype detection task that predicts whether the sentences are consistent with or contradictory to gender stereotypes. So before performing the classification task, we labeled our generated data set where we label the sentences as consistent with gender stereotypes, where the gender of the person described in the sentence is same as the gender of the gender word used in the sentence. And we label the sentences as contradictory to gender stereotypes otherwise. So here we see that the data sets generated are quite balanced across both the labels and also the genders. So we chose BERT and its variants, Distilbert and Roberta, for the classification task. We measured the classification accuracy of these classifiers across all generated data sets, and BERT classifier had the highest accuracy. So we measured the gender bias in the BERT classifier using true positive rate gap, which is the difference between the gender-specific true positive rates. So when the true positive rate gap value is higher, it means that there is higher gender bias in the LLM. The positive value of TPR gap value represents that the LLM is biased towards male, whereas the negative value indicates that the LLM is biased more towards female. So as we see in the results, all LLMs show some level of bias, with the bias towards male in the sentences that are consistent with gender stereotype, and the LLMs are biased towards females in the sentences that are contradictory to gender stereotypes. And Llama 213B has the overall lowest, as we see that the TPR gap value is very close to 0. When the TPR gap value is 0, it means that the LLM has no bias. Since the values are very close to 1, Llama 213B, this results indicates that Llama 213B has the overall lowest, and ChatGPT 4 comes a very close second. Our second evaluation approach is distribution-based evaluation of generated content, where we measure the likelihood of an LLM adding additional adjectives other than those specified in the prompt of gender G to sentences about a person with gender G. So in the odds ratio equation, the male are at the top and the female are at the bottom. So when the odds ratio is greater than 1, it means that the LLM is more likely to add adjectives to the sentences about male gender than the female gender. And when the value is less than 1, it means that the LLM is more likely to add the adjectives to sentences about female gender than the male gender. And when it's 1, it means it equally likely outcomes. So from the results, we can see that ChatGPT, before speaking about the results, ORM is the likelihood of the LLM adding additional masculine adjectives to the sentences it generates about men over women, and ORF is the likelihood of the LLM adding additional feminine adjective to the sentences about men over women. So from the results, we can see that the odds ratio in ChatGPT 4 is very closer to 1, which indicates that it has the lowest bias compared to the other models. And Llama 213b has no likelihood of adding additional masculine adjectives to sentences about men over women. And here we see that the ORF value is less than 1, which indicates that Llama 213b has a strong likelihood to add feminine adjectives to sentences about women over men. And Llama 27b, in Llama 27b, we see that the odds ratio value is greater than 1, which indicates that it has a strong association between masculine adjectives and sentences about men. And it also shows that it shows bias towards male gender. And when we see ChatGPT 3.5, the odds ratio value is less than 1, which indicates that ChatGPT 3.5 shows bias towards female gender. Well, we take the results from both our evaluations and rank the LLMs based on using Border count rank aggregation approach. We see that Llama 213b and ChatGPT 4 alternate between ranks 1 and 2, and ChatGPT 3.5 and Llama 27b alternate between ranks 3 and 4. Apart from this, we also measured the likelihood of the adjective being used to describe men rather than women. So when the odds ratio is greater than 1, it means that the adjective is used to describe men than women. And when the odds ratio is less than 1, it means that the adjective is used more often to describe women than men. So we measured the odds ratio for all the additional adjectives that have been added to the sentences by the LLMs. So based on the odds ratio, we label the adjectives as masculine and feminine, and we match these labels with the labels found in the gender lexicon. So this is a graph representing the match percentage. So lower match percentage is desirable because when the match percentage is high, it means that the LLM is more likely to use gender stereotypical words in these text they generate. So from the graph, we can see that all LLMs have a very high match percentage for feminine adjectives than masculine adjectives. This suggests that they are more biased towards male gender than female gender. ChatGPT 4 in particular shows lowest match percentages compared to the other LLMs. And this indicates that it has a lower bias towards using gender stereotypical adjectives in the text it generates. So I would like to conclude my presentation with few points. So LLMs, although they are very, very much helpful in text generation, but they do contain gender bias in the text they generate. As we noticed in the classification task, Llama 213b had the least and Llama 27b had the most gender bias. And when it comes to adding additional gender-coded adjectives in the text generated by the LLMs, ChatGPT 4 shows the weakest association, and ChatGPT 3.5 shows the strongest association between the gender adjectives and the gender of the person being described in the sentence. So these results suggest that ChatGPT 4 and Llama 213b exhibit the least gender bias, whereas ChatGPT 3.5 and Llama 27b exhibit the most. And and then the datasets that we have generated are publicly available for the people to use. Our study underscores the need for continuous efforts to mitigate gender bias in LLMs to prevent the perpetuation of harmful stereotypes in LLM-generated text. And we also want people to exercise caution and carefully review the LLM outputs to avoid any unintentional bias when using LLM-generated text in gender-sensitive context. Thank you. If you have any feedbacks or questions, please let me know.